Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Don Spector here, today with another IEM review, and I have for you the very much hyped Tripowin Olina in cooperation with our good friend Bad Guy Audio. And yes, if the reviews is to be believed, this has the same driver as it is in the Oxygen, so that would make it already pretty damn good. But, it's a big but. For today's review, I will change the structure a bit and start with the verdict, because there is a feature that we need to feature in quotes, but we need to talk about that already makes the verdict more important than everything else. And yeah, directly after giving the verdict, I will give you the main reason why my judgment is how it is. And then I will be going over all of the details that is about this IEM. So yeah, let's go directly into the verdict. It's a very capable DD, the IEM is well built, it has a pretty cool styling, let me just get it in the picture so you can see what I mean. Definitely does look pretty good, but Tripowin fucked up badly here, like really badly. They have learned nothing from the Mele, seriously nothing, and that makes me mad, because this thing has an, again, huge condensation issue. And it could have been great if they would have learned from the Mele and fixed the condensation issue, but they didn't. They left everything how it was with the Mele, and that means after wearing this thing for 20 minutes or so, it will condensate, and then you can hear shit. And that happens every 20 minutes. You let it dry, listen to 20 minutes, it's broken again, listen to 20 minutes, broken again, and so on. So really, I cannot recommend the Mele, and I have to highly recommend Olina, same as the Mele now. I can highly recommend you not getting this until they fix the condensation issue. So yeah, and that is already the main reason why you should not buy it. Like, it's well tuned, and it definitely does sound pretty good when it works, but because it condensates so badly and so quickly, you just can't use it. And here, to give you again the reason like how this could be, I will refer to my video about the Mele, which I already talked about what could condensate and how it could condensate in detail. But with this thing, I suppose the filter they're using here, let's just look at the filter for one moment. It's very dense, like I think it could even be just like via plastic or whatever. They definitely use it for tuning. And that then leads to the water condensating directly, I think, beneath the filter here. And yeah, this one stands slightly out because I tried the double filter mod, which obviously doesn't solve anything, like it just condensates, same as it did before, but it changes the tuning slightly. And I will also talk about that when we talk about tuning later on. So yes, cannot be recommended, stay away from this, wait until they fix the condensation issue, and if they don't, then don't buy it, just cannot be recommended. And that then brings me to the more detailed review part now, where we first look at the packaging and accessories. This is, as we've seen before, is the packaging, nicely styled black. It's relatively chunky, and after you slide out the packaging, you get the Tripowin logo here, or the Tripowin writing, and then here on top would be the IEMs, here pretty bad to see because contrast here, and then here you would get your carrying case. First, let's take a look at the carrying case. If you have had a few other Chinese IEMs, well, this should look pretty familiar to you. For instance, LZ Audio also delivers the IEMs in this exact casing and a few others as well. So the only thing that they change is the logo on top here. And yeah, opening it reveals an additional pair of filters, which don't really do anything because they cause the same issue. Like, I did replace my filters, but didn't do anything. So yeah, the filters are the issue here. And then you get tips. And yeah, talking about tips, it is pretty nice, but they put in two different pair of tips. One is a bit like more narrow bore, as you can see, and the other one would be a bit wider bore. Wait, here, the small one here. Also nice, but the small one here of the wider bore is really, really small. So that's good for everyone who has smaller ear canals like me. I really would need the smallest one here. So yeah, talking about the carrying case, after we did look at the tips, yeah, it does feel pretty sturdy and well made, but I can tell you from experience, it isn't. It's just glued in there with a ring of glue at the bottom, so it can happen that you just pull out the internal, like this thing here, you can just straight pull it out because it's just glued in with a simple ring of glue at the bottom. That ain't too great, but generally you can just glue it back in together if you like, and then it will protect your IEM reasonably. So yeah, and yeah, you can see here there's will flop it out, there's a warranty card here, and that's pretty much it. Of course the IEM, but yeah, packaging accessories is pretty nice, but for the sake of environment, scale it down a bit, make it smaller. So just use up less space, use up less packaging material. Will still look good if you keep this style, but it will be better for environment, and in the long term also cheaper, because yeah, it costs money to ship this box, and a smaller box is just cheaper in terms of shipment. Okay, so yeah, generally packaging accessories do look nice. It's approximately what I expected for the price. Maybe a pair of foam tips would have been nice, but generally, yeah, not a problem. Or not a point of critique here. Then let's get the IEM here and talk about IEM Build. Whoop. So this is our good friend, the Olina. And if you have seen the Mele, well, you have seen the Olina as well. It pretty much has the same shell, meaning there's a 2-pin connector at the top here. It has this, like, I want to say, like boat shape, almost shell here. It has a faceplate, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a 2-piece design, so you do get like the boat shaped shell here, which here is like this kind of frosted aluminum. Does look pretty neat because it has like a gray metallic color to it. And yeah, on the inside here, you have a pressure hole, another pressure hole here next to the bad guy, your logo. And then the 2-pin connector, which is ever so slightly recessed, like maybe 0.5 millimeter or 1/3 millimeter, as you can see here. So you can use every 2-pin connector that would work for flash 2 pins, but also work here. Talking about the connector, feels well integrated. I think this will survive dropping the cable relatively often. Even for the contacts will deteriorate over time, so don't do it that often. But still feels well made. Then let's go to the nozzle quickly. As I said, this is a 1-2-piece design, so this is all one piece, and then you have the faceplate. So the nozzle obviously is very well integrated, and you do have the additional lip at the front holding onto your tips, and this does work pretty well. And then on the top you have the filters here, or like the mesh, which is replaceable as we have seen. It's just with a glue ring on there, and yeah, generally it stays in place pretty well, but as I said before, well, condensation issue it is, so yeah. And then at the other side we have the nice looking faceplate here. And here I have to mention though that quite a few other people had problems with this faceplate. That means they get a new Olina that already has parts chipped out somewhere at the sides. It has some scratches at the faceplate, or it just looks plain up boring, just mostly white or mostly black. So yeah, that can definitely happen because this is a unique faceplate for every IEM. But I was pretty lucky and I liked it very much. So you can see here, like this is a nice like clouded like pattern here. Does look pretty cool, and yeah, I do like the styling very much here. The logo, of course, yeah. If you think reviewers are on brand now, up to you. I review the IEM independent of the brand. My main issue here, however, would be, as you can see, it already is slightly scratched at the top here, and I was relatively careful with it. So the resin that we're using here doesn't seem to be that durable. A few other IEMs that I have that are made out of resin still look much better than this one looks, and I haven't been using this for too long because of condensation. So yeah, generally I think this is a pretty stable build IEM, like it feels very well built. There's just some slight issues here in the details. As I said, like the faceplate here, can be chipped or can be coming chipped or already scratched to you, and yeah, also doesn't always look that great. Mine does, but your knowledge may vary here. And that then brings me to the next chapter when we talk about cable. Whoop. And I have to say, this cable isn't good. As you can see, it's tangly. It's not, like I tried to smoothen it out, but it just doesn't want to get smooth. It just doesn't. It's also more on the thin side. Let me just get it close to the camera here. And at least what it has going for it has a unique color. This like, I want to say like purple, gray, bluish color. So that's pretty neat. And also the like waving here is pretty tight together, so that's good. But everything else I just don't like. Already starting with the connector, this is very thin and flimsy, and it's also very slippery. So just putting it into a new amplifier or a more tight 3.5mm port will make this very difficult to be removed because it's just slippery and flimsy. Then we get a tiny strain release here, which as usual doesn't release any strain because it's just too short and yeah, not flexible enough. Then we follow a cable that, as I said, is not that great. It's like relatively thin. It is pretty tangly and generally, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but Tripowin, a cheaper Tripowin cable I had, really like 16 core, I think, that was like, I think $15, and that's much better than what you get here. So I don't understand why Tripowin manages to deliver relatively good cheap cables and then fuck it up with their own IEMs and the cables that they deliver with this. Okay, so continuing here, when you go to the splitter, again, Bad Guy Audio's logo on here. Color matching here is done pretty well, as you can see, so that's nice. And when you go further up to the two cables going to your ear, and as you can see, yeah, that's basically the same thickness as the cables here. So at least that's decent. And again, waving has been done relatively neatly here, as you can see. And when you go to the splitter, which does have a bit of resistance, so it at least fits somewhat okay for just walking in city center or so. It will slide down over time, but at least it stays somewhat in position, so that's at least also positive here. And then we go further up and we come to the ear hooks here. And as you can see, those have a relatively thick rubberization around it. Let me just get the IEM down so we can just look at the hook itself. The bending radius here is relatively small, but even for the rubber is relatively thick, it's still pretty pliable. So I don't think most people will have problems with the ear hooks here. And then at the top here, of course, you have your 2-pin connectors. And yeah, this also is again very well color matched, fitting the same aesthetics as the cable, as you can see here. And yeah, then there's a 2-pin here with a slight, like I want to say extrusion here. And this is just transparent, as you can see, but if we get the other side, I like this small detail here that you have a red stripe. Even for, I got to be honest, I like the red stripe more around the shell here or somewhere here, because this is relatively difficult to see. As you like already noticed, just holding it a bit of an angle already makes it difficult to see which side you have. Yeah, so generally cable ain't too great. Like it feels more like a $40-50 cable, like on IEM that is worth $40 or $50. So not great. And yeah, the other cheaper Tripowin cables definitely are much better. And I don't understand why they make bad cables for their affordable IEMs instead of just giving you a decent cable, which they absolutely can do. Then next, let's talk about comfort. And as usual, I will be throwing on measurements of the IEM so you can see how big it is for you and what the insertion angle is, so you can get to know like if this IEM will fit you well or not. As I said, this IEM utilizes the same boat shape as the Mele. That means it definitely does have a slightly ergonomic shaping going on, and it also is on the smaller side. The shell is about 1.4 centimeters high, 2.2 centimeters long, and about 1.4 centimeters deep. This includes the nozzle here at this case. So really, it's not that big, and I think just because the shell is relatively like smallish, it should fit most ears. However, including the nozzle, it's 2 centimeters deep. Sorry, slight misread from my notes here. Without the nozzle, it's 1.4. With the nozzle, it's about 2 centimeters deep. So my main problem with the shell here in terms of comfort is that the nozzle, let me just go back to video for a moment. Here, as you can see, is relatively thick. Like this is a 5.9 centimeters, 5.9 millimeters nozzle. So that will not fit every ear. And I got to be honest, I have problems getting it like to fit well with my ear just because the nozzle is so thick. Also, it is relatively short, the nozzle itself. So it is 3.3 millimeters in length. And that also means if your ear canal is a bit deeper or your pinna is a bit deeper, your outer pinna, then it can happen, but it gets difficult to fit this in and you really need to fit the right tip for you. For me, this was, for instance, Final E, which was working well. Also, liquid silicon tips also worked well. Tip mod I did not like here is the spin-freed CP360. I like this on most of my IEMs, but here the nozzle is just too short to work for me. And maybe the normal spin fits would do the trick here, but the CP360 just is too short. But okay, slight side note here. Going from SS, which is my normal size, to S did work a bit better, but still then it gets a bit uncomfortable because SS just presses a bit too much in the inside of my ear canal. So generally I think comfort here is still pretty good because the shell is relatively small and the nozzle is not extremely thick, but still the thicker side, and also keep in mind that it's relatively short. So if you know that your outer ear is a bit deeper, this could be a problem, but then just flop on a longer tip and it should be okay. Okay, after we talked about the comfort, let's talk about isolation. And as you can see here, same shell as Mele, so I also didn't expect much better isolation. And that's also what you get. It is pretty average, so meaning it's not bad, and it should be enough for the office, for at home, or for like normal public transport and not rush hour where, it's not too loud. However, going to busy streets, definitely you would either need a good pair of foam tips that fits you well, or just, I don't know, like it's not good enough for a main city center here. But that's also expected when you use the same shell as Mele, which basically had the same isolation. In retrospect, or when just thinking about it, I think this might isolate ever so slightly better, but just a bit. So isolation not too good. And that brings me to the next chapter. This is drivability. And the Olina clocks in at 32 ohm at 110 decibels per milliwatt at 1 kilohertz sensitivity on paper. That means it is relatively efficient. Not mega efficient, aber dynamics definitely are much more efficient here, but still efficient enough, and just from paper it should work with every dongle. And in reality I can tell you, that's also the case. Like cheaper USB-C dongle does work relatively well, same as onboard audio on my computer or on the laptop, absolutely zero problem here. I think the majority that you will improve on is just having a cleaner audio source. Just means something like BTR5 or Hibi FC4 or something, any dongle that just measures a bit cleaner, because also the Apple dongle would measure clean enough here, for instance. But the dongle I have, not so good. So I think it does profit a bit from just generally cleaner output power here, which is the same case as for most IEMs. Upping the power, as I said, like the BTR5 or Hibi FC4, which is my current dongle that I'm using, does make the sound a bit rounder and slightly better imaged, but generally not that much. So really you are fine with any output power you have. Upping the power even more to the SP200 plus SU8, I think didn't do anything here. Like maybe you could say it still images a bit better, I don't know, I didn't notice much to my ear. And hybrid tubes I didn't try here because I thought this had enough bass already, so I didn't really need the additional warmth of the tubes. So in numbers, I think the Olina gives you like 85 to 90% of what it is capable with any regular or random dongle. And that then brings me to the next chapter, which is sound. And here I talk with the general sound characteristics first. And in the term of this, the duration of this talk, I will throw in the measurement, also comparing it to the S12, because their tuning is relatively not similar enough to compare them. And they're also in similar price bracket. So the Olina, similar to the S12, is a V-shaped or U-shaped IEM, depending on your definition. I would definitely describe it as V-shaped, adding additional energy in the upper mids and a tad more in the treble, and also giving the bass department a bit more than what you would strictly call neutral. And then, as usual, I'll be starting off when talking about treble. And let's start with extension. Good news, this thing definitely does extend past 10K. So you do get a decent feeling of air on top, but the bad news here, there's a big spike somewhere past 10K. My graph does show a spike somewhere, but I'm not sure, like because the IEC 711 coupler is not that accurate, so we can't say for sure how big the spike it is, where it is. So just by ear, yes, there is a spike somewhere, and that makes the thing a bit grainy and come off as unnatural compared to other IEMs. Yeah, this is true for some cymbals, where definitively you do get the grain and the unnatural thing. Also some piano notes or violins. And yeah, generally also e-guitars can come off as, I want to say, like slightly sharp and unnatural pronounced here in the trailing ends or the leading edge. Just happens because the grain you add through the big spike past 10K. It's not too bad, however, definitively does not reach the level that some cheap dynamic plus BA sets do. For instance, the TK-ZK Wave, way more grainy than this one, but still this is more grain than I would have liked, and it also is more grainy than, for instance, the S12. So generally in my library, I do have enough tracks where you do notice the grain. I did notice here Cannibal Ferox from Nightcrawler or Sector from Ed Harrison. Grain is noticeable, but it still keeps a relatively decent balance in the upper treble. And that brings me to mid treble, and yeah, I think this is slightly softer than upper treble and lower treble here. It does not exactly follow Harman target, the Olina, but it goes in similar direction here. That means there's a dip between like 6 and 9K. And yeah, again, the peak at like 9K, that can or is due to insertion depth and ear canal shape. So some people will maybe have it at 8K, others at 9. To my ear, it was more in the 9K direction, meaning it does add a good splash to cymbals and e-guitars and making generally more metal tracks fun to listen to without coming off as too spicy. So I noted here Iron Maiden, Metallica, Linkin Park all worked pretty well, and I didn't have any problems with sibilance whatsoever. But again, keep in mind, depending on your ear canal, this can be pushed towards 8K and then it will be sibilant and you might not like it. And then going a bit further down here, the Olina definitively pronounces 5K. Yeah, so if you are sensitive to that, might not be exactly your thing. But for me, this was not a problem. And yeah, lower treble through this like Harman-ish tuning has an additional clarity added, which makes it nice for female vocals in my opinion, and very similar to the S12 in this regard here. So again, if you like clarity there, good thing. If you don't, and you are sensitive to shout, which can be introduced by adding a bit more energy in the lower treble department, well, this might not be for you. However, again, I didn't have any problems, and my usual examples used here, female vocals in the Nier Automata soundtrack, were just very well represented, had a nice tonality to them, very good clarity, and I just liked it very much. Same thing again with Cannibal Ferox, where also the vocalist was very well audible and just well done overall. And that brings me to the mids. And yeah, if you like yourself some upper mid energy, same to lower treble, this is a good IEM for you. It definitively does add more energy there. Again, keeping similar shape here to the S12, just with a slightly pushed peak there, or slightly pushed towards the other side there. So it still keeps in similar tonality here, and that makes, can, if you are sensitive to that again, come off as too much in the upper mids. But again, I didn't have any problem, and there's nothing negative I can say here. I just like this type of tuning. It brings me to the mids, and here, I found the Olina very pleasant, definitively a bit better than the S12, which goes even more V-shaped than this one. And that makes male vocals, for instance, from Chester Bennington, from Linkin Park, very well pleasant and very nice audible with a very good tonality. Also, I noted Kavinsky worked very well, and Iron Maiden, which are, I want to say, mixed, relatively neutral, also came off as pretty damn good. Some reviewers complained about nasal sound of vocals, like they complained about timbre and the mids here, and I can see why you would write this because of the additional energy past the mids, but personally, I couldn't really hear it. Like, I can see why you would hear it like that, but I just didn't notice it too much. And I think, yeah, the Olina does strike in good balance here without coming off as too much or too nasally. So really, don't worry too much about then some people critique there. It could be audible, but generally isn't. Like, shouldn't be any problem. And it brings me to lower mids. And yeah, the lower mids are slightly pronounced, like over neutral, but it doesn't get like too much pronounced. So you still have a relatively cleanish lower mids here. It is not as clean as, for instance, the AJ07M or the variations or other tribals that usually have just plain, simple, flat mids all through. This definitely does have energy there, and that means lower pitched male vocals as well as bass guitars have additional energy and definitely come off as a bit warmer than what strictly would be called neutral. But again, the dynamic here from the oxygen is pretty capable, so it doesn't get muddy in any way, and yeah, I didn't have any problem with the lower mids here. That brings me to the bass region, and I think the second best part after the mids here, because mids had in good balance, is the bass. That means you do have upper bass energy here with, again, outcoming off as too muddy, and it's not the main point in the bass region. So the main attraction here is the mid bass, which does have a good punch that is superior to the S12. Even for on the graph, the bass is less pronounced and the S12 has more there. But I think generally the mid bass here has a better punch than the S12 can have. Yeah, so let me just scroll down a bit. Yeah, I did notice as examples here again, Future Bloodline from Scandroid worked very well. Ed Harrison's Sector also had a very nice punchy bass line. However though, occasionally in some tracks I noticed here Lost Boys from Essenger. I think I would have liked even more bass. I'm not sure why, maybe because sub bass is ever so slightly rolled off and the S12 just did a better job there. But I really think this could use a bit more bass, and I'm not sure if I ever said that to another IEM so far, like just a bit more might have made the overall picture better, but just in the sub bass, like I really just would like a bit better articulation when we go from mid bass to sub bass here. Because yeah, like similar to the S12, I think it's not really a capable driver in the sub bass department, and it's most comfortable around like 50 to 70 hertz, and after that you still get a bit of like extension, but really it just lacks the texture that other better DDs have. Again here, Mountains from the Interstellar soundtrack, the Olina managed like 2 minutes 14 and a half. If you're very generous at higher volume, 2 minutes 15. But that is not that great for dynamic drivers that I have heard. And yeah, again, something like the LZ-A7, the dynamic in there manages 2 minutes 16. And also the AJ07M, which small anecdote here is a great dynamic driver, also manages 2 minutes 16, keeping very good note weight. And on that note weight, yeah, that's also something, it does lag a bit, the Olina, compared to the S12. The S12, when you hear it, like this has like a really good authority in every bass department note, without reaching, as I said, the lows there, but it has a really good authority, and this just lacks it a bit, but while having better punch. So depending on what you like, one might be better or the other. And that brings me to soundstage, layering, and imaging. And yes, having listened to the S12 before, I did expect pretty decent from this, and I also did get pretty decent here. The S12 does have a good soundstage. The Olina still has a good soundstage, just slightly less. So you do get less height, but yeah, generally it's still better than average, I would say, just a bit. And yeah, the imaging, however, here definitely is superior to the S12, making it easier to pinpoint enemies, for instance, in Insurgency Sandstorm. Depth and layering, I found okay, like didn't feel like anything special at the price. So mostly you do get 3 layers, like center and then left and right on your ear. And occasionally, like really occasionally, you also get the outside layer there. So pretty much as expected. And then next chapter, let's talk about separation, dynamics, and coherence. And yeah, I might be a bit unfair, but I think just separation, the S12 definitely beats it here. And it's kind of expected because it's in planar, and yeah, I just didn't expect it, so I don't want to be too critical here. It still separates well enough, even though it's a downgrade from the S12. However, macro dynamics, when we talk about that, definitely go to Olina. It just manages better, even for just by a slight margin. For in planar, the S12, to my ear, does come off as pretty good dynamic in terms of macro dynamics. So yeah, this just is a bit better dynamic there. And then microdynamics, here definitely the S12 does a better job maintaining better detail generally when you have just two slightly differently loud notes. S12 definitely does a better job there. But yeah, what you do lose there with dynamics and the micro department, I think again you do gain in terms of coherence and timbre. Because yes, the S12 does have a standard timbre of in planar, so you could say it comes off as slightly plugged, plasticky, and yeah, I can see why people don't like it. I personally absolutely don't mind it, and I think the timbre that you do get here, to my ear, is even slightly metallic, possibly even a bit shimmery, maybe caused by the peak after 10K. So yeah. That's to my ear, and again, coming back to when people said it's nasal, cannot confirm it. I can see why you think that with the added energy at 3K, but I personally can't hear it, and that's why I said, yeah, like to me it comes more of as slightly metallic, so your knowledge may vary. Okay, and I think that's it. Yeah, I will not repeat my verdict again, just will tell you again, don't buy it, condensation is bad, really needs to be fixed. And with this, I want to say, John Spector out.